You see, and then Games Workshop made 5 main games. Old World, Age of Sigmar, Warcry, Underworlds, and Kill Team. But then they made 3 specialty games with even more power: Space Hulk, Necromunda, and Blood Bowl. But you see, they made one game to rule them all. No, not that one. Battlefleet Gothic! Wag! Welcome back to the Red Ones Go Fast, the old Big Mech here. And yes, we are talking about Battlefleet Gothic. That's right, Battlefleet Gothic, the game about spaceships.
Spaceships! 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 Spaceships!
All right, now that I got all the grots out of here as they're going spaceship crazy, yes, the game about spaceships, Battlefleet Gothic. It was the coolest specialty game Warhammer and Games Workshop ever made, although it wasn't really popular when it was out. We're going to talk about it in this episode for a very specific reason. Old Big Mac happened to get himself some. All right, so a primer for those of you that might be unfamiliar with this. Back in the 90s, Games Workshop was hitting its second golden era of wargaming. 40K 3rd edition had come out and really hit mainstream. The original Warhammer, which is now Old World, was really hitting its stride with a new edition that was doing really amazing. They were doing all sorts of specialty games. They had this large format game called Inquisitor that was really cool. They had Mordheim, and they had Battlefleet Gothic, which is, as you see, the game about gigantic space fleets. And it was really, really cool because it pushed the narrative and the boundaries and the world building of Warhammer 40K to all new levels. Now, there had always been, stories in the codexes and the rule books and stuff about, being in space. The Eldar lived in craft worlds and things like that, but there had never been models of them. Even in like the old Epic and stuff, Thunderhawks and things like that, planetary landers were the biggest they got. You didn't get into battleships and escorts and things like that. And I mean, even whole Blackstone fortresses and ports and just, whole communities in space. And so they got all of this artwork, they got all of these models, and they really started building it. Now, the game itself, I will be honest, as somebody that was there and played it when it was new and when the kind of pseudo second edition came out with updated rules, it was clunky. It took a really long time to play. It was really complicated and convoluted, and the win-victory conditions were a little wonky. But that didn't matter. What mattered were the models. You see, these models are some of the best Games Workshop ever came up with, and the vast majority of them are metal. There are plastic Imperial and Chaos cruisers, and I think that's about it. There might be some resin things, but the vast majority of them were metal and sold on the little blister packs. And so it was really cool because you could build up a fleet for not much money at a time back when it was out. And it was a lot of fun to collect the fleets and display them because even though you had a whole fleet, it really didn't take up that much space. And that's, I think, part of why this game has so much appeal now, 20 years after its death. And I think the biggest part of that is that the design on these little spaceships was actually really good. The orc ships looked like giant piranhas, for lack of a better term, and were just brutal and cunning. The Imperial ships looked like Gothic cathedrals in space. The Chaos ones looked like those, but different and like kind of pirate shape looking, without just being, good guys but with spikes. And the more they came out with different fleets, the more it grew, and the more that it really added so much depth to the Warhammer 40,000 universe. And to this day, all of the artwork and all of the stories and anything involved with the space combat part, with going through space, is incredibly popular. And that's why I wanted to talk about this game as being the best of the specialist games. Even though it wasn't the greatest game when it was out, even though it wasn't the most popular when it was out, here we are 20 years on, and these models are among the most expensive out there. Look at any other game that's been discontinued for so long and look at the value of the models and what they bring on the secondhand market, and almost none of them are anywhere near what Battlefleet Gothic brings. There's just something about this that hits this right inflection point for players and collectors alike that just, you can't get enough of it. The fleets are really cool. They're really recognizable. I mean, honestly, outside of Star Wars and Star Trek, this is probably the most recognizable spaceships out there in modern culture right now. They really are. I mean, yes, there are definitely franchises, that have a lot of, knowledge and fandom and whatnot about them. But as far as the actual spaceship design, if you pulled up a spaceship from one of these sci-fi things, whether it's a show or a movie series or a video game, most people can't really identify the spaceships. But you put an Imperial cruiser photo up, and even people that don't really know anything about Warhammer go, yeah, that's like the Warhammer ship, right? I mean, it's just that iconic, and I think that's part of what brings people to this game, is just how iconic those fleets are. And then, again, if you're into 40k at all, if you have a 40k army, you tend to kind of want to have the fleet too, because then you can kind of like do this whole like, oh, we're going to go in and do a fleet battle and land, and then whatever, then you do your land battle and have all your 40k battle on top of it, and you could do these really cool and thematic games with your friends and really tell a story about your Space Marine chapter or your Eldar Corsair band or whatever storyline you want to come up with is. But it's really cool to be able to play that out both in space and on the planet. So as far as the state of the game today, there is a huge and healthy community out there keeping Battlefleet Gothic going with new rules and revisions and updates, and it's really fantastic. So if you want to play the game in its original form, you absolutely can. Everything is out there. You can find it, you can print it, and it's really accessible. If you want to buy the older books, the rule books tend to be not much money because, again, it wasn't a very well done game in that regard, and so a lot of people bought it and didn't really play it, and so there's a lot of kind of rule books out there in the wild, but again, you can find everything online for free. It's the models that get pretty pricey, and really the bigger they are, the pricier they are, and the rarer they are, the pricier they are. The standard Imperial and Chaos stuff is pretty decent because that's what they made the most of, and that's what was in the starter sets. And then they brought other fleets on. You had the Orcs, you had the Eldar, even Tau got a fleet. And so the newer the fleet, the less they made of them, the rarer they are. There's also the size of the ship. So these are escort ships. These are your smallest ships. They do have fighters and bombers, but those are multiple per stand. But as far as the ships themselves go, the escorts are the smallest and the cheapest to get. They're typically in packs of 2 to 4, depending on what size they are. These particular Orc ones, these are Savage gunships. They came in a pack of 3. These are Onslaught ships, and they also came in a pack of 3. And then these are Ravager attack ships, also in a pack of 3. And these are a little bit larger than the other ones. All of the different fleets had different things. So there are some that were very escort heavy. There were some that were very escort light. There are some where you kind of only had really a few choices of escort. There are some that you had just a whole plethora, and generally the differences in your ships are what kind of weapons they had. You could either have standard guns, or you could have lances, which were kind of like really crazy las cannon type thingies, or you could have like torpedoes. And so those are kind of like your main ones. There's definitely, it gets way bigger from there, just like 40k. But yeah, you kind of had these different kinds of weapons for the different ships depending on what they wanted to do. Were they going toe to toe with something? Were they trying to get something from long range? Were they getting up close and then absolutely pummeling? Are you boarding? There are definitely escorts and other ships that can go in and ram other ships or try to board them, especially from the Orcs, which are really, really cool. Your next step up from that were your cruisers, and the cruisers were about this big. And yeah, they were pretty cool, and they were like the mainstay of your fleet. Most of your fleet would be cruisers, and there were definitely light cruisers that were smaller and heavy cruisers that were larger. But you know, the cruiser was about, you know, the standard. And then if you really had some money, even back then, you could get a battleship, and battleships were huge. And remember, these things were metal, so this is the kind of thing you could, you know, you really crump somebody with. And these days, if you want to get your hands on a secondhand battleship for just about any fleet, it's going to start at 100 teeth and up, especially if it is complete and in good shape. If it's brand new in the box like this, you better be prepared to spin your grot's teeth too. Now, all that being said, there are some options. If you get online and do some Googling around, you can find some 3D printed fleets that are very similar for not very much money comparatively, and they are definitely a good option, especially being that, I mean, again, most of these haven't been produced in 20 years, and can be really hard to come by. It's also a great way to get kind of newer ship designs that might have artwork in the Warhammer universe but were never made as an official BFG ship. There's also a growing community of people that build their own fleets and their own ships out of real Warhammer bits. So you basically like take a Tau drone apart and you know, lay it on its side and then glue a bunch of stuff on it, and you can make a Tau ship out of it, and it looks the part. And so it's all about this, you know, little greebly bits. So if you're into kit bashing and scratch building, it could be a great way to, you know, kind of build a fleet up using all your spare bits and parts. Now, I am really excited for my little fleet here. I do want to try doing some of the scratch built stuff as well, but the nostalgia with this is just so hard. And really, if Games Workshop was smart, come here, Games Workshop, let's have a talk. You want to print some money? Stop raising prices on 40K. Stop raising prices on paint. Stop coming out with, you know, funny little card games and stuff. Just make Battlefleet Gothic. Just make this. Heck, you could even make it in metal again if you wanted to, like you're doing old world stuff. You don't even have to make it plastic. Just make this, and we'll pay you, like, a lot. Like, printer money go brrr. You could do that with BFG. I think more than any other game you've ever made. Just saying. So yeah, if you are excited about BFG, definitely throw some comments down below. I'd love to talk to you about it, and I'm super excited to get into this and do a combination with the new boarding actions that just came out and make my own little scenarios and things like that to play. And I mean, just look at those beautiful, beautiful cruisers. I am super excited for this project. Oh, yeah, here's your whole fleet right here. So there you go. There's your escorts, your light cruiser, regular cruiser, heavy cruisers, and battleships. Yeah, there's your Space Marines, and there's the Chaos Fleet, Blackstone Fortresses. I mean, again, it just, how can you not love that? So yeah, I'm super, super, super excited for this project and getting back into Battlefleet Gothic. It's the game that I most want reprinted. It's the game I most want to collect. And yeah, even though I just have 9 little itty bitty escorts, that's a fleet. That's a right proper fleet. And I am excited to add it to my orc collection and get it built and painted. So if you want to see that, definitely click subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And we will be doing videos on repairing and restoring and painting this fleet up and getting a proper WA going. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you. And until next time, WAGON!